It's not even a full week into 2021 and the hashtag Civil War is already trending on Twitter. And after the events that happened at Capitol Hill yesterday, it got a lot of people frightened. Will 2021 begin with a civil war after Joe Biden takes Trump's spot as president? We can only hope not. But with Trump continually leading his followers to believe that the election was rigged, who knows what could go down within the next couple of weeks. Hey everyone, what's up and welcome back to Life's Biggest Questions. I'm your host, Lindsay Ivan, and today I'm bringing you the video, What if Donald Trump starts a civil war in 2021? Again, let's hope that this isn't the case. So on January 6th of 2021, an angry mob of Trump supporters stormed Capitol Hill. Thousands of rioters showed up to cause violence. They fought with the police, got over the barricades, and managed to get inside Capitol Hill. After that, they began smashing windows and vandalizing the building. The rioters ended up getting into the Senate chamber where prior the election results were being certified. Many were seen waving Trump 2020 flags or wearing Keep America Great memorabilia. They then were caught looting and destroying offices of lawmakers such as the House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's office. This is considered one of the worst security breaches in US history. This was done as an attempt to stall the certification of the election results. As a result, the building was placed under lockdown. Now of course, being that this was done by Trump supporters, Trump is being blamed for this. Hours before the riot, Trump delivered a speech that ushered his followers to head to Capitol Hill. He said, and I quote, "And after this we're going to walk down there, and I'll be there with you. We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women." He continued on saying, "And we're probably not going to be cheering so much for some of them, because you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength and you have to be strong." This was followed with him claiming that the election was rigged by radical Democrats and that this whole thing is a bunch of fake news. Continuing on, he told his supporters to not accept the results of the election. He concluded by saying, "We will never give up. We will never concede. It doesn't happen. You don't concede when there's theft involved." And that is what is said to have pushed the Capitol Hill takeover to happen. It's just scary to think about how much power Trump has over his followers. Although Joe Biden won, and it's been proved that he won fairly, Trump is convinced that the election was fraudulent. It's his way of not having to face defeat. And he's managed to convince hundreds of thousands of others that this is the case. He has said things like, and I quote, "Statistically impossible to have lost the 2020 election." He tweeted that on December 20th. Followed by big protest in DC on January 6th. Be there, will be wild. And he was right. So Trump managed to convince thousands of people to storm Capitol Hill, and they did this fairly successfully. So imagine what else he could get them to do. If he has that much influence over people, then yes, he could potentially start a civil war. Trump has the power to divide the country in half. If he continues on saying things were rigged and fraudulent, then his supporters are going to go to even more extreme lengths to try to overthrow Biden and get Trump back in office. In fact, after this happened, Trump still didn't realize how serious of an issue this was. He posted a message on social media to address what happened. In the video, Trump said, and I quote, "It's time to go home now. I know your pain, I know you're hurt. We had an election that was stolen from us. It was a landslide election and everyone knows it, especially the other side. But you have to go home now. We have to have peace. We have to have law and order. We have to respect our great people in law and order. We don't want anybody hurt. It's a very tough period of time. There's never been a time like this where such a thing happened, where they could take it all away from us. From me, from you, from our country. This was a fraudulent election, but we can't play into the hands of these people." A lot of people were outraged by this because it seemed as if he was trying to justify the rioters' actions. And by saying things like fraudulent election and having it taken away from us, it's still fueling the fire. It's still going to cause uproar among his followers. If Trump never comes to terms with his loss, then neither will they. And this makes the chance of another riot or even civil war a possibility. Now, Trump continued on by saying, and I quote, "We have to have peace, so go home. We love you. You're very special. You've seen what happens. You've seen the way others are treated that are so bad and so evil. I know how you feel, but go home and go home in peace." Now, the only good part about this video video is how Trump said we have to have peace and law and order. We can only hope that he will continue on promoting peace and respect of the law. Again, the video was very problematic because he didn't tell his supporters off. He didn't tell them their actions were unacceptable, meaning they could go on to continue to fight for Trump in violent ways. When Biden becomes president, a lot of people are predicting another violent uproar from Trump's supporters. They are fearful that they will try to overthrow the Biden-led government. What could this mean? Potentially the storming of the White House or attacks against Biden and his government, or even attacks against individuals with opposing views, and more street riots in an attempt to get the government to change their ways. All I can say is that this would end badly for everyone. Now let's talk about the American Civil War that occurred from 1861 to 1865. This war was between 11 southern states that seceded from the Union and formed the Confederacy. Now a lot of things did lead up to the Civil War, but the main thing was the northern and southern states' different opinions, such as the northerners wanted to protect free labor and felt there was a moral imperative to ending slavery. On the other hand, southerners felt as though their institutions would fail if they limited the expansion of slavery. Also, the North was modernizing and finding new ways to do things. This led to politicians being unable to make compromises between the two sides and pushed a lot of people over the edge. Then Abraham Lincoln won the presidency that year, causing those opposed to him to begin the Confederacy. In the end though, after 4 bloody years of conflict, Abe and his government did win. But it was considered the bloodiest conflict in the history of North America. Around 620,000 American soldiers died during this war. We do not need this to happen again. It would completely devastate the states in a time where they are already currently overwhelmed by the pandemic. If Trump does start a civil war, then hundreds of thousands of individuals would be killed. On top of that, if people are going around fighting during COVID, then it's just going to continue to spread and overwhelm the country. Hospitals would be overflowing with COVID patients and injured people from the battles. In the end, the war wouldn't be successful. It would leave the country devastated, and it would take them a long time to rebuild their society and structure. Now, most civil wars are said to be fueled by fear. One group of people fear another group, maybe because they have contrasting views or they believe they pose a threat. As explained by social psychologists at the University of Massachusetts, they said, and I quote, "Existential threat is a perceptual phenomenon, meaning that the threat only has to be perceived or imagined for someone to experience a sense of existential threat." And that's what Trump has done. He has made it seem like people are out to get him by constantly saying things like the election is rigged. It makes Americans scared. They don't know who to trust. Now again, let's look back at the first Civil War of America. That's when America was divided, just full of people unable to come to terms with their opponents' values, lifestyles, and political agendas. A lot of the arguing had to do with human rights, racial inequity, and the economy. Doesn't that sound familiar as to what's happening right now? It for sure does, which is very worrisome. So in the end, it seems as though it comes down to Trump. Should he continue on slamming the government and the election, the more it's going to fuel his followers. This in turn could possibly lead to a civil war. Again, that's the worst case scenario. Let's hope that the rest of January, and the year for that matter, goes smoothly and war-free.
To no surprise, there are now claims across the internet The Simpsons have once again made an incredible prediction. Well, the event in which they apparently predicted isn't so incredible, more so the fact that they predicted an event in the first place. On January 6th, hundreds, possibly even thousands of Donald Trump supporters collectively gathered together to protest the election results. The protest ended up making its way to the government's Capitol building, where officials were certifying the Electoral College votes, thus officially naming Joe Biden the next president of the United States of America. As we know, they didn't get to follow through as planned, after numerous unruly supporters stormed the building, literally taking over. Outnumbering police and security forces, these extremist supporters, some armed, made their way into the Capitol building, and after hours of being in control, were finally apprehended. Oddly enough, there's a Simpsons episode where something similar happens. Today on Life's Biggest Questions, we're asking, did the Simpsons predict the storming of the Capitol? Smash that like button and let's get into it. So which episode are people talking about, and is it actually similar at all to what has happened? I'll cover all of that, but first things first, It's from Treehouse of Horror series episode 31, which is really season 2 episode 4, and aired November 1st, 2020. Obviously, given that the episode is going to be airing 2 days prior to the election, that was the main focus of the show's famous opening scenes. You know, the ones that they show before every episode starts and right before the writer's credits, like after the opening when they open the garage. But this time it was different. It was a Treehouse of Horror, so instead, it showed Homer sleeping in a hammock on November 3rd with no intention to vote until Marge calls him to persuade or yell at him. At this point, he's in the voting booth. The show jokingly establishes that Trump's running mate is Putin, and while debating who to vote for, Lisa jumps in. She questions how Homer could even think about voting for Trump given what he's done over the years, prompting Homer to ask his daughter to remind him. The show then proceeds to list off numerous instances and times Trump has done wrong, almost in a rolling credits type sequence. As Homer is about to vote, it cuts back to him on the hammock sleeping, and it turns out he didn't vote. When Marge yells at him, he asks, "How bad could it be?" To which the show cuts to January 20th, 2021, Inauguration Day, and it's the apocalypse. Homer is on his roof wearing pots and pans as armor, holding a shotgun and drinking a beer while there's broken buildings and burning landscape all around him. However, there is also a large metal government robot looking machine that attacks Hans Moleman, the old Simpsons character known for not having the best luck. Obviously, the show's writers were not only trying to highlight the importance of voting to the viewers in general, but made their stance on current President Donald Trump very clear. In case you couldn't tell, they're not fans. As Homer sits on top of his roof, he looks up to see the 4 headless horsemen with flags right behind them. The flags read pestilence, famine, war, and Treehouse of Horror 31. Great opening, wish we could show you guys, but you know, copyright and stuff. Look it up though, it's on YouTube. So what does that have to do with storming the Capitol? Well, people on Twitter were quick to make the comparison that the United States was heading toward a war of some kind, or an apocalyptic state. Now, that seems a little extreme, but I mean, it's the internet, right? It's the wild, wild west. Out here, anyone can do or say whatever they want. Turns out numerous people have been making the comparison. Some tweets claim that The Simpsons predict on the 21st an all-out war will break out, while others were saying the image of Homer on his roof and the fire is where things are headed, given the recent events that have occurred at the Capitol building. Now, the reality here is that The Simpsons were simply just trying to have some fun, make some jokes, claiming if Trump were to win the election once again due to people not voting, well, the country would become a literal war zone. As I said before, the writers of the show, clearly not fans. However, to say that they predicted anything is a bit of a stretch, don't you say? But to no surprise, that's not where things end here. It seems people are almost eager to find ways that The Simpsons predicted the future, and will try to connect current events to past episodes one way or another. For example, someone else jokingly tweeted out that The Simpsons predicted the Capitol storming, sharing a clip from the episode titled The Day Violence Died. Episode 18, Season 7 aired back on March 17th, 1996, and a segment in the episode was a parody of the 1976 Schoolhouse Rock segment, I'm Just a Bill. The Simpsons version was I'm an amendment to be, and when the amendment is ratified, he then says, "Doors open, boys," to which a ton of other amendment or bill looking characters start storming up the steps of the Capitol building, holding all types of munitions, from shotguns to explosives, and who knows what else. Some have been making the comparison that this is what the actual scene at the Capitol building looked like on January 6th when Trump supporters took over. The YouTube video of the clip has tons of recent comments saying The Simpsons predicted the future once again, or time-stamping the specific part in the scene and putting a date of January 6th, 2021, alluding to that actually being our current reality. And yet, there is another photo that has been going viral, leading many to believe The Simpsons somehow predicted the future. I'm telling you guys, it's gotten to the point where people are now trying to find similarities between the show and reality, and depending on how much we give into it or not is what really determines how much they've predicted. Which leads to my next point, the viral video here. You've likely seen a photo of the pro-Trump rioter wearing a fur hat with horns sticking out, similar to what was worn during older wars. This man's name is Jake and Jelly, and let's just say he's known for having some very extreme views. We're talking like the real very extreme kind, openly aligning himself with organizations that are, you know, not seen to be the best. You know, the ones that spread wild rumors and then do incredibly extreme things, such as storm the Capitol building after buying into said online rumors. Either way, Jake also has quite distinctive tattoos, so when a photo of everyone's favorite custodian, groundskeeper Willie from The Simpsons, started going viral, showing Willie wearing the exact same thing Jake was, with the exact same tattoos, well, people were freaked out. Now, when you see the photo of the two side by side, I mean, it's damn freaky. They're pretty much identical, and if you weren't a fan of The Simpsons, or just didn't do your own research, then yeah, this is very weird. It's not a similarity we're talking about here, it's the exact same thing. Almost as if it's too good to be true, and that's because it is. It's unclear where the first side-by-side photo started to circulate, but I found tons of tweets including the images, as well as comments from Twitter users mentioning how photoshopped or fake the image is. And of course, after it's been proven to be fake, everyone is quick to point the finger and say, look at this guy who believed it. But prior to us getting to the bottom of this one, a lot of people were quick to point out how The Simpsons, yet again, predict the future. To no surprise, this led to the side-by-side images to go viral fairly quickly, and gain a lot of traction. Maybe some people want to believe The Simpsons really are privy to information we're not, and over the years, they'll slowly tell us what the future has in store. I would not put my money on it though. Instead, maybe start watching another show by Simpsons creator Matt Groening, such as Futurama. That may be a better indication of what's to come. Getting back to the photos, Snopes, a fact-checking website, broke down a detailed explanation of why the side-by-side comparison was fake, showing the original source of Willie. Firstly, the image of Willie wearing the furry and horned hat with the face paint American flag in hand, an identical tattoo similar to that of Angeli, well, it's not even real. To no surprise, everything was photoshopped onto groundskeeper Willie to help further push this ideology that the Simpsons can see into the future. The original image of Willie does show him shirtless and screaming, but he's not wearing anything over his red hair, he's got no tattoos covering his muscular body, and his fist is raised in the air, but there's no flag. The image in which he's seen posing in front of the Capitol building also appears to be completely manufactured. After getting a larger view of the image as a whole, it shows the Simpsons, as well as Willie, appearing to be almost cut and pasted in front of a Springfield version of the Capitol building. Again, when seeing a cropped version of the image side by side next to Jake and Jelly, at first it certainly is a little believable. But when you see the entire image, you can tell this was clearly the work of someone who is trying to play a trick on the internet, and it looks like they succeeded. Now, if I said that is all there is to this one, I'd be lying, because let's be real guys, as I said before, people are looking for ways The Simpsons predicted the future. I guess our future. Which is why there is yet another internet theory, if you call it that, circulating the web that although it didn't gain nearly as much attention as the fake photo of Willie, in my opinion, this one is actually much more accurate when compared to real life events. In season 11, episode 1 titled Beyond Blunderdome, which aired on September 26, 1999, Homer befriends movie star Mel Gibson after attending one of his film's screenings. All in all, everyone writes positive reviews about the film except for Homer, which leads to Mel seeing Homer as the only person in the world who will be honest with him. The two then rewrite the movie, a remake of Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, and includes a sequence where Gibson's character enters Congress with a gun and kills every member of Congress as well as the president. Now again, I don't think Mel Gibson was among the protesters or rioters, although I wouldn't be all that surprised given his past history. All joking aside guys, it seems moving forward we're going to be dealing with a lot of people trying to prove one way or another that The Simpsons did indeed warn us about events in the past pertaining to our future. Although they've said themselves time and time again, they just write what they know, aka history, and history repeats itself, people will only hear what they want to hear sometimes.
We are one day away from Joe Biden's inauguration, with plenty of people feeling all types of ways about it. The other day I saw that the hashtag #BidenIsTrump was trending, whatever that means. Most folks can look at the two elderly politicians and see that they are indeed different people, but I digress. Since back in November, it's looked like a pretty tight race for the next president of the United States, but Biden did end up on top. That didn't stop Trump from promising to take up the mantle once again though, so will he go through with it? Will Donald Trump run for president again in 2024? Let's talk about it. Right, so as things currently are, a president can only serve 2 terms as commander-in-chief, so 8 years is the usual limit, but 10 is possible under specific circumstances. The thing is, not all these years have to be done at once. As we saw with Grover Cleveland, a president can indeed serve 2 non-consecutive terms. Cleveland is the only president to do this so far though, so knowing all this, we can assume that Trump will be able to run again in 2024. After Biden serves his first term, Trump could indeed step up to the plate once again. We know that Trump can potentially run again in 2024, but will he? During a reception at the White House, Trump spoke pretty candidly with a crowd of Republican supporters. In doing so, he implied that a 2024 run was still on the table. While addressing his audience, he said, "It's been an amazing 4 years. We're trying to do another 4 years. Otherwise, I'll see you in 4 years." However, one has to wonder how 4 years out of the spotlight would affect Trump and his commitment to being president. He'd be pushing 78 when the opportunity to run again arose, which could prove to be a barrier, although Biden did it at that age, so who knows. The thing is, at this point, nobody can totally be sure if the Republican Party would want him running again. During his time as president, Donald Trump has ruffled a lot of feathers. Coming into his presidential campaign, he was seen as a dark horse at best and a joke at worst. The fact that he made it into office at all stunned a whole lot of folks. While some people in the Republican Party just ran with it, others didn't seem to like his presence in the party. After 4 years of a totally non-traditional Republican president, the cracks are starting to appear. In fact, even Trump's ex-national security advisor seems to think that a 2024 run would be ill-advised. H.R. McMaster says that Trump is too polarizing to back, which really shouldn't be too surprising, especially lately. Trump elicits strong reactions from everyone, and there isn't much of a middle ground. So if he were to run again in 2024, the Republicans might not want to take the risk of alienating large portions of their base. Even typically pro-Trump Republicans seem to be rethinking their options lately. After Trump tacitly encouraged the storming of the Capitol in early January, things got a little wonky. After mobs of flag-waving Trump supporters took over the Capitol building, resulting in 5 deaths, Trump's leadership was called into question. How could the sitting president endorse the actions of people who openly committed acts of domestic terrorism? Well, that's a question that's been on plenty of minds lately. Reading Trump's tweets after Election Day paints a pretty clear picture that he was trying to delegitimize the election. All of this has pretty heavy implications for Trump's future as a Republican leader, especially after Trump has been banned from pretty much all social media. Remaining on the periphery of our omnipresent digital landscape would make it particularly tough for Trump to run again in 2024. And with a potential second impeachment on the horizon, his chances seem even slimmer. Here's the thing though, Trump's impeachment doesn't actually prevent him from running again. Sure, if the Senate actually votes to remove him this time, he'll lose his post-presidential benefits, but in order for him to be barred from running again, the Senate would need to have an additional vote on the subject. So if the impeachment alone goes through, Trump could indeed attempt a 2024 run. Would any political party support a twice impeached ex-president? Well, I'll let you draw your own conclusions on that one. And there you have it. Trump may very well run for president in 2024, especially if he gets hyped up enough by his red-hatted flag-waving supporters. But there are plenty of obstacles in his way. From a general shift away from supporting him to potential constitutional barriers, he's gonna have to get pretty creative to pull off a presidential run. So what do you think? Will he emerge reinvigorated and ready to fight another day? Or will he play some more golf now that he's got the free time to do so?
Many former presidents now spend their days playing golf or relaxing under the sun on some tropical island. But I don't think Donald Trump's end of presidency will look that luxurious. There's a real possibility of him getting convicted for a number of crimes he committed while in office. Currently, his second impeachment process is underway, and this could result in some serious consequences for Trump. Will he get convicted and spend time behind bars? Or will he be able to work his way out of this? Let's discuss this all and more only in today's video. Hey everyone, what's up? It's me again, Lindsay Ivan, and welcome back to Life's Biggest Questions. Today I'm bringing you the video, What If Donald Trump Gets Convicted? And don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel to really help us out. Now, there are currently 12 investigations underway involving Donald Trump. The People vs. Donald J. Trump criminal case has been in the works for years. All they need is for 1 or 2 of the cases to be strong enough for him to face criminal charges. And now it's going to be easier since he can't rely on the title of president to save him. First off, let's take a look at everything he could get convicted for. For starters, we have tax fraud. For quite some time, Trump has managed to hide his taxes from the public, but the New York Times managed to expose what Trump and his family have been doing for years. Trump has been illegally passing money to his children tax-free. On top of that, Trump has deducted hundreds of thousands of consulting fees that have been sent to companies that the Trumps are employed by, which is illegal. Furthermore, Trump has loaned $50 million to himself, and he might have written off hush money payments as a business expense. You get it. He owes millions of dollars in income taxes, real estate debts, and other loans. Let's move on to Trump's bank and insurance fraud. Trump has forged a number of banking statements in order to receive lower premiums and interest rates on loans, which in certain circumstances is illegal. Additionally, back during the 2016 presidential campaign, Trump donated $10 million to his campaign. After that, he received $21 million from a Las Vegas hotel that he co-owns. People are thinking that this is an illegal campaign contribution. The last 2 areas Trump could be convicted for are bribery and negligent homicide. Some have argued that Trump will be convicted of negligent homicide for the way he handled COVID-19 and the thousands of citizens that have lost their lives as a result. And lastly, Trump has lied to investigators, committed obstruction of justice, and conspired with Russians to help him in the 2016 election. All of these crimes come with a 5-year prison sentence per offense. So right there, that's 15 years in jail. On February 9th, Trump underwent his second impeachment trial. For those of you that need a refresher, Trump was impeached back in January and was charged with incitement of insurrection. This came days after the deadly riots at Capitol Hill. This is going to be a long process, but in the end, what this will ultimately do is prevent Trump from running again in 2024. That's right, if he is convicted, he loses his power to run as president ever again, which he has teased about doing. Another thing that could happen is Trump could find his way behind bars. Although he's got money, power, and connections, there's a lot of solid evidence against him. On top of it all, Kamala Harris stated back in 2019 that if she got into office, then the Justice Department would have no choice and that they should prosecute Trump after his presidency. Now that she has the power to do so, she may go after Trump hard, not stopping until he is prosecuted like she mentioned before. On top of it all, a lot of people on Trump's team have been charged and have been to jail, such as his former lawyer, Michael Cohen, who was sentenced to 3 years in jail, or Trump's advisor, Roger Stone, who was sentenced to 40 months in prison, or his former campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, who was sentenced to 7.5 years in prison. They are all wealthy men, high up on the social ladder, but they still couldn't escape their conviction and jail time. It may just be that the same will happen to Trump. But if this does happen, of course he's not going to be put into just any jail. He's going to be separated from the rest of the inmates. It wouldn't surprise me if he would have to live in solitary confinement. I mean, take a look at the case of Robert P. Hansen. Hansen was an FBI agent that sold thousands of classified documents to the Soviet and Russian intelligences. He was sentenced to 15 consecutive life terms. He is now serving his time at the ADX Florence, where he is in solitary confinement. Now, the reason why he's in solitary confinement is because he knows way too much about highly classified materials. I mean, presidents have access to highly classified intel, so chances are if Trump went to jail, he would be kept away from the others for this reason. And also for his safety. I bet there's a lot of people in prison that aren't a big fan of him. Now, here's something scary that might happen if Trump is convicted. There might be more deadly riots. I mean, you saw what happened at Capitol Hill. Thousands of individuals stormed that place. This was done as an attempt to stall the certification of the election results. Now imagine that Trump's in jail. They may try to storm the prison to try and break him out, or they might just cause an uproar in the streets. If this is the case, this would end very badly. Lastly, if Trump does get convicted, that's going to have a huge negative impact on the Trump business. The name would be further tarnished, and they probably would lose a lot of business deals. So not only would he suffer, but his business and family would suffer also. In conclusion, it's not looking too great out there for Trump. They got a lot of things stacked up against him. It might be tough for him to work his way out of all of this.
We're almost 2 months removed from the storming of the Capitol, which happened on January 6, 2021, and it still seems people are in disbelief it happened in the first place. The last time something similar happened dates back to the War of 1812, when the Capitol building was stormed along with the White House, and both were burned to the ground. Only difference is back in 1812, the Canadians and British were at war with the US, and in 2021, it was the American people going to war with their own. And the burning all happened in, 1814, but that's irrelevant. I think at the end of the day, we're all very disappointed and aware that what happened on January 6th was very un-American, yet somehow it still happened. And it's not like the government officials and agencies weren't expecting anything. Which leads us to today's question, is Capitol Hill still vulnerable after the riots? Smash that like button, let's get right into it. Now you'd think after what happened at the Capitol, with politicians literally fearing for their lives, while everyday Americans intruded, guns ablazing, literally, that they'd ramp up security. And it seems that although not having enough security was the issue, it's not that they didn't have enough preventative security measures available at their disposal. Government agencies just didn't seem to take any action at all. Leading up to the protests, they knew were going to happen. What do I mean by this? Well, let's look at a timeline of events, proving that what happened at the Capitol building could have likely been prevented had people done their jobs properly. In the fall of 2020, the Department of Homeland Security recognizes a threat focusing on the, I quote, heightened threat environment during the 2020-2021 election season, including the extent to which the political transition and political polarization are contributing to the mobilization of individuals to commit violence. Fast forward to late December, and reports claim that the New York Police Department submits evidence to the FBI and US Capitol Police, which leads the NYPD to believe there is going to be a riot at the Capitol on January 6th. Finding information information across numerous social media platforms and websites indicating exactly that, the NYPD tried to proactively prevent anything from happening. With this knowledge, for some reason, neither the Department of Homeland Security nor FBI created any kind of intelligence report, with focus being on a pro-Trump rally on January 6th, even though there was evidence something of that nature was likely going to happen. Had the government agencies created said report, local government officials would have been able to prepare more readily for what did happen. That report was never made, and no one is too sure why. On January 5th, the FBI sent out an email to local law enforcement, which included a threat report for the Capitol. However, that email wasn't passed along to Robert Conti, Washington's chief of police, nor did former Capitol Police Chief Stephen Sund see this report. As Conti testified, I quote, "What the FBI sent, ma'am, on January 5th was in the form of an email." He followed up saying, I quote, "that something as violent as an insurrection at the Capitol would warrant a phone call or something." So clearly it was more so a lack of action than not having enough security or the means to maintain the mob that stormed the Capitol on January 6th. Sund also testified that he had asked for the National Guard to be deployed, but the process to have them deployed was delayed, explaining the, I quote, "first 150 members of the National Guard were not sworn in on Capitol grounds until 5:40 p.m., 4.5 hours after I requested them and 3.5 hours after my request was approved by the Capitol Police Board." Adding insult to injury, it seems some of the government officials who were placed to protect the Capitol building were actually welcoming the rioters. On January 11th, Representative Tim Ryan of Ohio announced that 2 Capitol building officers were suspended after one took a selfie with a rioter and another put on a MAGA hat, I quote, "and started directing people around." So aside from the lack of action from numerous government agencies, you also have the foot soldiers pretty much switching sides in the middle of the war. And to add the cherry on top, the Capitol building wasn't designed to prevent the threat of an angry mob. Over the years, lawmakers and security agencies have used previous attempts or attacks on numerous buildings, both government and regular, to find out how to secure the Capitol building. Adding more officers on the ground, implementing a visitor screening process, adding a new air filtering and mailing system to prevent another anthrax attack are just a few of the things they've done over the years. If you were to go over all the security measures and protocols put in place over the years to ensure the Capitol building and those working inside are always safe and protected, you'd think it'd be one of the most secure buildings in the world. However, when you have a lack of communication or potentially government officials who either didn't care all that much or didn't think there was any real threat for whatever reason, you're bound to have problems. It seems all in all, Capitol Hill will always be vulnerable, simply due to the fact that there are people in high positions of power who clearly don't know how or just don't care to do their jobs properly. I mean, I really don't care what your political beliefs are. If you're being employed to protect the Capitol building and instead start directing people around and taking selfies, I mean, come on. All in all, hopefully the situation will just be a huge wake-up call that there needs to be more vetting among those employed, and further preventative measures will now be put in place to ensure something like this never happens again. As always, guys, let us know your thoughts down below. For now, let's reply to some comments from the video. Why did the Texas deep freeze happen? Jay Norman said, "Our global warming messed up pretty bad." Yeah, I mean, I think global warming probably has something to do with it. Again, they said it's also like a weather phenomenon, like the polar vortex. It happens, but it's been happening more frequently over the years, and meteorologists don't know why. They think obviously it's natural weather patterns as well as human climate change, us just being here. So Reese Rich 13 said, "Bruh, it's literally Canada, except here it's worse and 6 months per year." Yeah, I've been living in Canada almost 27 years now, for the most part, and not a fan. It's snowing right now, it's cold, I don't like it, I'd rather have the heat. I kept saying I want to move to Texas, but apparently they get snow too now, so I don't know. Munch said, "I live in Texas, the snow was cool at first, but goddamn it sucked when everything went out." I got a really good friend from Texas, Dwayne, my buddy from Xbox. I play Xbox with him all the time. Shout out Dwayne Jones, my guy. He lives in Texas, and he was telling me when it first started snowing, he was sending me videos and pictures being like, "Look how cool this is." And then he told me like a week after, he's like, "My dad had to help a bunch of people without power, without this, without that." So I'm glad that everything, he told me yesterday, I think it was yesterday, 2 days ago, he said it was sunny and 76, he said. So I think everything's melting and hopefully everything's okay now, but still, I feel awful for all those that had to endure no power, no heat, nothing. It's awful. So wishing you guys all the best. That's all for this one, guys. It's been your host, Jared Bronson. We'll see you soon. Okay, take that whole thing again. Oh, and there goes my phone. Perfect. I just love working at home, guys. It's so fun. This is the best. I'm so happy we get to do this.